Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I have on my friends Derrick and Ian from the Do You Feel Heard podcast, which I've been featured on, and me and Derrick have done a couple of podcasts together on here in the past too, as well. And Derrick and Ian are both really awesome people. I know they do conscious relationship coaching and help a lot of others. I know Derrick is also very involved with Buddhist meditation, with psychedelic therapy, and many other fields and modalities of healing. So, thank you guys so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having us, Alex. It's great to see you. Rocking the beard. I'm really liking it. We got some beard bros over here. No, it's wonderful to get to talk with you.
Yeah, happy to
Thank
be
you
on,
so
Alex.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Ian, since you haven't been on here before, maybe you could tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah, what do I do? I spend a lot of my time working and building this nonprofit, and the main focus being helping people communicate more effectively. And so we do workshops. Derrick and I have a podcast that we do every week where we talk about that subject. Individual coaching. I mean, we're working on a program for drug court participants to help them
Yeah.
get some tools and resources to build a foundation as they're overcoming recovery or in recovery, overcoming their substance abuse. um, I mean, really, if it's anything to do with communication and improving it, that's where you can find me. That's where I spend most of my time, that and tinkering around my my property with my chickens and my garden and fish and just the ridiculous farm that is my personal home.
That's amazing. Yeah, yeah. Your communication is definitely amazing. I remember from our last talk, your insights about that, very good. And that's awesome with the drug court. I've been closely involved with those areas as well. But yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, I guess we can get started talking about that idea that you brought up, Derek, when we were talking about devotion. And I think you were saying a way of devotion in relationships and with God, or maybe how they look in one another.
Yeah, I'd love to expand on this. It's perfect. Ian and I were recording an episode of our podcast earlier today, and I couldn't help but already broach it a little bit. So we'll be picking up the thread. I think it's fascinating. I've just been thinking about devotion in a lot of different areas. And Alex, when you were on the podcast, it was actually called the Path of Devotion. Or
Yeah.
so it's funny because we circled around a lot of good topics in that. I recommend people check it out. You're awesome. And so lately, yeah, I've been thinking about devotion and what you're devoted to, why you would devote yourself, what it means, and what that actually looks like in different relationships. We talked about religious devotion before, devotion to a guru, to a deity, to a certain religion or set of practices. You can be devoted to that, a devoted Buddhist, a devoted Catholic, a devotee of Maharaji or another figure. So we have that kind of devotion. And then from this relationship lens, I'm thinking about devotion to your partner, to a relationship, to a marriage, to your children. What does that mean to be a devoted husband, father, partner? That devotion. And then you can obviously see how that goes out to other things. Some people are devoted to a sports team or devoted to the law or devoted to these things. So I want us to kind of get in a talk about what that means and kind of the through line that really connected the podcast earlier. I was talking about something that always resonates with me, doing it for someone other than yourself. Whatever it is, do it for someone. Ram Dass would talk about do it for God, do it for your family, do it for your partner, do it for the trees. Just do it for someone. Devote your practice, devote your work, your service to someone else other than yourself. And I found that to be really wise. So that's got the kind of the through line I think about when I think about devotion. One possible benefit, it seems to really open me up. I want to kind of get into how, why, and what it looks like in these different fields.
Wow. Yeah, you said all that needs to be said.
No
That was
answers, just more
beautiful.
questions, though. No answers, just more questions.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think it just reminds me, I found this big Saint Catherine of Siena book that I've never read that I bought
Mm.
years ago. And I was like, yeah, should I read this or one day get rid of it? I'm like, I'm sure she was a great saint, but I just wanted to look up a little bit about her. And she only lived to, I think, 33 years old, maybe. But she had a revelation where Jesus came to her. And he said something like, to love me is to love every other being. Basically, he told her, I am every other being that you also run into. That is also me. And I think that is beautiful because we do sometimes think of devotion to God as something, some people might think of it separate, right? But really, true devotion
Mm.
is, as you're saying, being devoted to all living beings, right? Like being able to serve all living beings. And that means each and every person that the universe puts in our path. We might not be able to help them all, but
Mm.
being willing and able to be of service. And I think what I've been leaning into a lot is seeing how each and every person, and or if it's a being like an animal, like their life and their life is so precious. Their life is so sacred. Like there's not one person that should be skipped over or not worried about. And each moment you get to be there and show up for someone, like for me with the people I work with in recovery, um, is really important. Yeah, it's really
I'm sure we're going to debate that. Are all lives valuable? All right, in counterpoint.
important.
Yeah. Now I'm curious how you think of devotion. If there's anything you're devoted to, where does that term stick with you the most? Both of you.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
you can go
I
ahead.
was going to challenge you. I was going to, as usual, Derrick, challenge challenge
Good.
your opening statement, or at least offer another side of the coin, one upping you, if you will. The
Let's
idea
see
of
it.
devoting your work or everything that you do in this life to others, or devoting it to anyone other than yourself, I feel like, I don't know. I'm reminded of the saying, or proverb, if you will. It's an inside
You and your
joke.
proverb.
Um, but everything is a proverb. Everything I've ever heard from the past, if somebody said it, it's a proverb to me. But essentially, the only thing that you can do for anyone else is work on yourself. And
Mm.
so by loving yourself and working on yourself, that is how you're going to benefit everyone around you, because you are going to be a more ideal, healed, well, maybe hopefully tempered person who is going to be able to benefit everyone around them because of the work that they did on themselves. And if you're only focusing on how you can benefit others and you never work on yourself or give yourself the love or the grace or compassion or understanding that you give to others, I think you're going to be less able to benefit those around you.
Totally. I hear that. I think you guys are both saying the same thing there with I'm hearing a lot of interconnection, interdependence talk. And I do think that's kind of the through line here. I still find it really interesting. I totally agree with you. And I don't think we're in conflict here. No, conflict is a good thing. I do think we're quite aligned there. I I don't see a real separation between self and other, but when I do see the separation, I think it's these tools or these frameworks, these pairs of glasses, like do it for someone else, that we can put on that can help us get back to the state of seeing things as a more interconnected whole. And so when I am feeling isolated, cut off, separate, and I'm not having the motivation to do the thing, work on myself for myself, so it's this interesting trick, I guess, I can play. It's an interesting tool that I can use of putting it through well, who am I doing it for? Let's do it for someone else. And then, eventually I come back around to realizing anything done for others is for me, anything for me is for others. So it's a beautiful flow. So I think it's another one of those paradoxes where there's not really any hard lines.
No, I just wanted to play a little I just wanted to play the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
The other coin we could play, the other rabbit hole we could go down would be that there is the idea of separation is an illusion. So doing it for others, there is no other. We are all one. And so doing it for them is for you, and doing it for working on yourself is working on them as well, the collective.
Yeah, well, that's good. Then I want to throw that back to Alex. Alex, what are you devoted to? We have the path of devotion on our podcast. Alex, what would you say you're devoted to?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, the thing Maharaji always said is serve all living beings. And yeah, I agree with what both of you guys said. And it's, I guess the not misunderstanding, but if somebody's very much in struggle where they feel maybe out of people pleasing or out of have to, or they're doing these things of I have to do everything for people, that is one level that could be hard, right? But when we can really get into a place where we are starting to overflow with love, we are
Mm,
starting to understand these principles of service, like you're saying, how we are all one, and we're giving not in a way that seems forced or burdensome, but just freely. And sometimes it is maybe even might be at a challenge to you or at a cost to you, but really it's not at a cost to you because that blessing and that energy is more than is more than what could be asked for. And so I always believe Maharaji used to always say to raise the Kundalini, love people and serve people and
mm,
feed people. So what was a really interesting thing for me as a practitioner of Kundalini Yoga and meditation and these things is to realize that the path of service is a legitimate path, which is the same path Jesus really taught. The path of service is a legitimate path to God or to awakening, So in essence, I guess what I've been seeing a lot through Ramana Maharshi, who always said there's no others, is that devotion for me is my devotional path is connected with Hanuman and with Christ and with Maharaji, but ultimately it's to expand that love to everything and everyone, right? And Ram Dass used to say, you love a tree, you love a pet, you love a flower. He said, now keep expanding that love, right? You love an altar or a deity, but the love it shouldn't stop there, right? The love is to
mm,
expand into that consciousness. So I think devotion in the truest sense is to me, meaning I'm trying to find out who I really am. Because that devotion,
mm,
if you say to God or to the one, is to us, right? So really, and one thing that it was a very cool realization for me after following a lot of bhakti yoga and devotional yoga, the yoga of love, and then getting into Ramana Maharshi, who teaches self-inquiry and who am I, right? Like the illusion of the ego. I realized through his teachings, he's like, they're one and the same because staying centered in the heart and trying to find out who you are. He said that is the supreme devotion. The supreme devotion is finding out who I am, right? And being available if others want to wake up to who they are too. So that's a little bit of what it means to me. And I think in relationships with partners and parents and family, it's if we can spiritualize it, if we can honor each other to that depth where we really feel sometimes in India they say serve the other is God. And it's hard to remember that because when you're very close with someone, you have different patterns and habits that you get used to and stuff. But can we see it on that level? Can we start it like when Mother Teresa used to say, I see the face of Christ and all its what does she say? Distressing disguises. Yeah, distressing disguise. No matter who it might be. Yeah. And also not just in humans, in animals too, and in insects and plants and in all of these things. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I still try to, not 100%, but I still try to rehome any bugs in the house or anything instead of killing them like I used
Yeah.
to. And again, try to, spread that, whatever it is, to all things. So if I want to be loving in one scenario, I feel this call to do it in all scenarios, or else there's some kind of duplicity going on. So even if it seems silly to not, practice violence against the spider, I have some belief that, an act of violence carries through to your other relationships and become more likely, regardless of who it's perpetrated on. I
Yeah.
like that.
There
All of
was
our
a story.
relationships. Hmm?
Yeah, Wayne Dyer. You guys probably know Wayne Dyer, right?
You sent me a
Um,
book by him actually as one of your many acts of service, which you do very often, it seems. I have to say, you really do walk the walk, my friend. But yes, I do have a book of him that you sent me one time.
oh, thank you. Yeah, he said he talks about in his Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life that he was playing tennis and he saw a bee laying on the ground that was at the end of his life. And he was having a good tennis game, but he said, I figured I'd put the bee out of its misery, and he just squashed it or whatever. And then he actually said the rhythm like the rhythm in his heart and the spirit of the game and everything turned against him and he didn't feel right. And he said it seemed subtle, but it was a lesson for him. He said, even though that bee might have been at the end of its life, he said, I don't really think it was my place to be the one to kill it. Like that's God's place, the universe's place, how it was going to go out of the world. But he's like, I didn't feel right about that. So that was a cool lesson. And I do notice, it's funny that we're on an insect topic, but I do notice that when I see insects, and small creatures, they really remind me of the presence of love and consciousness. 'Cause I'll be in my head thinking about something, and then I see a little bug walking across the computer screen or something, and it reminds me the universe is living in that little creature too. Like pure consciousness is in that little thing too. And it really kind of gets me out of my whatever melodrama I'm in at the time sometimes. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
I really like that. Ian and I were talking about nature a lot this morning, and Ian was talking about tuning in. And I like this idea of small animals and bugs being like a little, almost like a bridge between the nature of the trees of a forest, which is harder for us to tune into, and something more agentive and living, like a bug, but still not to the level that we go as humans, where we can sometimes get so removed by our layers of abstraction. It's a nice bridge.
Yes. Yeah, man. And it is like, yeah, devotion. It also involves a lot of surrender and a lot of forgiveness
Yeah.
and a lot of forgiveness for ourselves and for others and humbling of pride and the ego and keep, yeah, because when we hold on to grudges and these things, they really, they hurt us in the long run. They really hold us down in the long run. And I do think, as you said, that being of service is, um, for me, it's definitely the most fulfilling thing in my life. But it's also that knowing of you just being an instrument of the universe, an instrument of the divine, right? Not thinking I am so great because I'm serving or I am the best helper, but just serving because that's what we do. Like Ron Russ would say, like one hand helping the other. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
What do you
So,
think, Ian?
yeah,
No, it's two old friends catching up and just riding the wave. But I'm here. I'm with it. Yeah, I think devotion for me just triggers this idea of something bigger than yourself, being devoted to something bigger or grander than just you, just your individual experience. So whether it's your purpose, which is going to be, bigger than you, the path that you're on, even if it's improving yourself, being devoted to that because it's bigger than, it's going to benefit more than just you, and therefore it's worth devoting yourself to. I don't know. That was one of the things that I had written down, and that every time I hear that word come up, even in this conversation, I'm hearing something bigger than yourself that you are serving. And talking about serving, I mean, what a great segue for Wheel of Consent, Dr. Betty Martin, incredible resource. But as we talk about doing something for others, I'm hearing all of these examples of being in the shadow of the Wheel of Consent, serving because you feel obligated to, or because it's going to be really you're giving, but you're wanting something out of it. You're not truly giving from a place of, I want you to receive this gift of love from me, and there's nothing else in it. There's nothing, no strings, there's no ulterior motives, nothing underlying. I'm genuinely giving this gift of love. And whether you receive it, like it, how you feel about it, none of that is as important as the fact that I feel compelled to do this for you.
Yes.
And so I think that's I wanted to give that credit to that person, again, Dr. Betty Martin, does great work. And I've done quite a few things with her organization, and the reframe of consent has completely tilted and shifted how I perceive my experience. So anyone who isn't familiar with it, please go check that out. It's incredible work.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to encourage everyone that, somebody might think, what opportunity do I have to be of service? But it doesn't have to be something that seems ground shaking or world breaking. All of us, I think everybody that lives in communion with other people, with life, has the opportunities in daily life that come up. And the more open we are to it, the more the universe knows that you're an instrument that can be used, and you'll find yourself in these situations. And really, it's just, if you look at it from the internal perspective, it's getting out of the patterns of selfishness and self-obsession and what's in it for me, right? Or just focused on that. And I think that's one thing that I learned so cool through 12 step all the years that I was in there, that focuses so much on being of service to others, is that when you're living in addiction, when I was living in addiction, it's trying to find what I thought was lasting happiness through more substances or through more sex or through more of this. And then finally I came to this point where that drove me into a lot of despair, and I realized it wasn't quite going to do it. It wasn't doing it at all, actually. But for a couple moments, you think it's going to do it. Like when you first found it, when I first found the drugs, I was like, wow, this is it, man. This is the way to happiness. But through that pain, somehow it cracked something open inside of me, to then an expansiveness came, and I started seeing a little more and a little more. And it reminds me of Rumi speaks of, each time you break out of a cage or a prison that's successively bigger than the last, right? And I think back to when I first entered addiction recovery, and huge change, but then I still didn't know that over the years it would get deeper and expand, and there's still so much to go, outward or really inward. But yeah, yeah.
And talking in non-duality, I like it. The inner and the outer. Talking like Rumi over here. I guess we are what we read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that definition, and I think that's really succinct and clear. Something larger than yourself, because I could take that so many ways. Whether it's, like you said, purpose was really good. Whether it's the impact that I have, let's say I do something and it's just taking care of myself that day, hydrating. What's the impact of that, though? The impact is larger than myself. The impact of me not going to the hospital because I got dehydrated, saved the resources and cleared up a hospital bed for someone who needed.
Hmm.
The fact that I was hydrated, maybe I sent a voicemail to someone, and a nice message, or
Yeah.
maybe I did the tiniest thing, and I at least made myself not a burden. Like, again, just trying to get to the lowest possible level, to like you were trying to do, Alex, reframe the service thing, remembering that it seems like it's more about the orientation you're in. And as soon as you do orient outward, and it being about something larger than yourself, something outside of yourself, it just kind of happens. The things just start happening. Just if you're in tune at all with nature, things happen that you would call service, but you don't have to make a big deal about. You don't have to think of it as
Yes.
this big
Yes.
sacrifice. And that's just what Ian's putting there with, I love that, bringing up the will of consent in this. What I was hearing was the danger of ego. Whenever you attach to, let's say, a role, I'm the server, I must serve, or just the ego, the attachment to an outcome, to pleasure, or whatever it is, you can step into that shadow, like you were saying, in that shadow of serving, and it stops being in tune. But if you're serving yourself as much as you are the rest of the world, if you don't have those false separation, which is often what I think about ego, just a false separation, a sense of separation, like a bubble you're drawing around some role or some part of you, and not seeing it as connected. If that separation seems to be the source of the shadow, if you can get rid of that, a flow happens, like you were talking about
The
earlier in
flow.
nature, and it's a flow. It's a flow. The flow of service. I like that.
I'll add on to that act of service not having to be some grand gesture. I've been listening to on Audible, Ram Dass has the Be Here Now podcast where they take little 10 to 40-minute clips of him just talking, Q&As and just different lectures over the years. There's 200 something episodes on there, and I'm about halfway through. I'm going backwards, which is really weird. I wish I wanted to start at episode 1. It was a whole thing with Audible, but I'm going backwards, which is an interesting way to listen to all of those podcasts. But anyway, one of the things that he talks about serving, is that it's not, you don't have to be anyone different than you are. Just do it with loving awareness. You can be a bus driver, but that bus driver who is love and is beaming and holding that space and happy to be where he is and or she, and happy to take those people onto the bus, and he, content with what is happening with their experience at that time and just doing it with love, that in itself can change and impact every one of those people's experiences getting on the bus. And when they leave, you don't know what they're taking with them, but likely if you are carrying love and spreading it outward, they're receiving it and they're feeling it in more subtle ways than a direct line of, I'm doing this for you, you're receiving this from me, thank you, you're welcome. It's just happening, and we receive those gifts on more subtle levels.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's what service, and it's so important to point that out, right? That it doesn't have to be something that it's, here you go. Oh, thank you for that. Or like, here you go. It's sharing the love. And I mean, to be honest, too, for people listening, the one of the main things that I do is I interact with a huge number of people through text, Facebook Messenger, and Instagram Messenger on pretty much a daily basis, like sometimes dozens of people. And it's just sharing love back and forth, like satsang, like spiritual love. It's not like, it might be a question on an occasion, but it's not service in the sense that each person says, hey, help me with this question or help me with this problem. It's more just the dialogue of love and reminding people, hey, we're focused on the love. And they're reminding me, hey, we're focused on the service. We're focused on the spiritual path. And that is a service, and it's mutual. It goes, and whenever I am helping anyone, like one of the clients I work with, somebody that's going through stressing time, anything, and especially sometimes clients I'll have, they feel kind of guilty. Am I taking too much of your time? Or I know you probably have other things to do. And I always say, no, like this is the best thing for me. Like, thank you. Right. Like, I am so graced to be able to be here with you and do this with you because it helps me just as much. And I honor any person that is trying to work on themselves, just as I am too, you know. But yeah, I love that with Ram Dass, and it's just, and then when you are of service and people do thank and praise you, just letting it go through you, because as long as there's no little attachment to the doership, right? You realize that that one consciousness is doing everything. So when people say things, you can bow back or whatever it might be, but just letting it go through you, not saying, I'm great for this or I'm great for that. And that's, all of the greatest saints of the world are known for their humility. And we always have to keep reminding ourselves of that. And
Yeah.
they say, right, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Yeah, it made me think of as soon as you attach to any of that gratitude, you're just trapping yourself in a certain stage of Rumi's ever expanding prison.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the expression yet, but it should be Rumi's ever expanding prison. Reap. That's how I heard it. It's like you can, do the most, but then as soon as you cling on, you're stuck there. But like you were talking about, there's this expansion that can keep going on. How large can that circle of intimacy grow? How large can that circle of love grow? And that's where I hear abundance. And I think abundance is kind of the underlying mindset that has to be there to live in the way that you're talking about, Alex. I would love to just feel like I, could just shoot out meta all day long in love and service and, always be responding to all the texts with the right focus on love and this. And then eventually I reach some kind of boundary, barrier, exhaustion. I'm worried I'm going to give too much and I'm going to, dip or something. Something will happen. There's some false illusions here. There's some separateness here, but there's you know what I'm saying? I'm going to give up the shop, like Ram Dass would say, you're worried you're just going to give too much and go out. So I do think that abundance is like almost a belief you have to have or a state that you have to cultivate, a little bit of both, to keep doing that. That process.
Yeah, it takes a lot of trust and faith and surrender and deepening. I think the more we're deepening our own spiritual practice and our own work, the more we're able to hold more of that love and that consciousness. And I think at first we might have to sometimes consciously think, oh, I'm gonna have to stop to fill myself up or this type of thing. But what I've learned through Maharaji's love with me is that when I really trusted him, it kind of happens naturally. Like this whole past month or so, I was just running around everywhere, like wherever he's leading me, meeting with people, bringing people together, doing things. And then all of a sudden, one day it'll change and I'll realize, like, oh, the last 3 or 4 days I've been brought inward and been brought slowing down. But what I've been learning is if I really trust in the flow, I don't even have to really use the thoughts to decide anymore and be like, oh, I'm going to need to do this or need to do that. It's kind of just happening. And then it's like, oh, I guess this is the time for this. And then it's like, oh, I guess this is the time for that. So I found that's a new thing I'm kind of finding out. It's been pretty cool to feel into and kind of trust into.
Well,
Yeah.
that begs the question: how do you surrender? Yes, this is another thing Annie and I were talking about earlier. Faith, and it's I don't know, it's a rocky subject for me. So, how do you have faith in that intuition? I guess you would call it in that sense, and how do you surrender into that thing to the level in which you do? I cling, I hold on. How do you let go?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, one thing I do is just using prayers of surrender. One prayer I always say is, I surrender to you. Please take care of everything. Or I say, Thy will be done. Thy will be done. Or I say, please show me the way that leads out of suffering. And I kind of do it even when say I'm deciding what to do between something, such as today I had the opportunity to I was supposed to be taking two guys to a 12-step AA meeting, and I texted the third guy to see if he was coming, and they were all bored yesterday, but then none of them were answering me today. And then it got close to the time, so I thought maybe I guess it's not going to happen because it's 40 minutes away, and I have stuff to work on. If they're not answering, then I guess I'm not going out there. But then all of a sudden, the one guy that was going to meet there texted me back, and then another guy texted me back, and it was very close to the time where I should have had already left. But rather than going in the mind and saying, what's the right choice? I just look to the heart and I think of God and I say, Thy will be done. And then I trust whatever step happens next is what happens, right? And then I find myself in the car going to a meeting. And then there was a guy at this meeting who is struggling and is getting better now and is asking me, hey, can you be my sponsor? And then you see, oh, God brought me here, right? But that's cool. So that's how it is for me, is getting out of my own head in the sense of, say somebody wants me to go do something 30 minutes away. Instead of saying, does Alex want to do this or not want to do this? It's thy will be done. And then if it's meant to happen, it happens. And if something else is meant to happen, then something else happens. And so for me, that's part of the surrender for me. Another big part in practical application is bowing. I like to clasp my hands and bow. When I go in the morning, I start every day in the shower and I kneel and bow all the way down. And for me, that's an act of surrender. I say, I surrender to you. I bow to you. Show me the way. And then, of course, we have to keep doing this. Ramana Maharshi says, if your surrender is complete, then you're enlightened, right? He said, so you make the initial surrender, but it's not complete because you keep taking it back. or whatever. You have to keep giving up. You have to keep giving up. And then when I'm going throughout the day, when I do the prayer, the mantra of Ram in my heart throughout the day, for me, that's my prayer of surrender. When I'm doing it, it's that one word for me is encompassing love, is encompassing God, is encompassing surrender, is just saying it all in that simple word of Ram. So, yeah, I think the words do help me. The words and the mantra help me until I touch the place of silence where there is no words and no mantra, and then that is the highest form of surrender. But I think we really have to have that longing. Yeah, we have to keep building that longing. Or if we don't have the longing, we ask then for the longing, asking for that desire. Yeah. It's like Jesus says, right? He's like to all who ask receive, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be open, which is one of those quotes you always hear, but it's true.
Sounds like a proverb to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mind went to a place focused more on people who struggle with being in flow, being in the feminine. Um, Derrick and I were talking about this morning when we were recording about how for the majority of my years I was very much in the masculine, just by default because of the environment that I grew up in and what was modeled for me. Very much a mindset and lifestyle of if you want it, you've got to go and get it. You've got to create it for yourself. No one's going to create it for you. Get out there and hustle. Time is money. All of this kind of,
Yeah.
indoctrination, brainwashing that most people get through media and what have you in the US. And I was definitely one of them. And so that version of myself would hear some of what was shared here and say, okay, that sounds ridiculous. I'm just going to ask whatever and they're just going to tell me where to go. Like, no one's going to tell me I have to do all of these things. And I know there's a lot of people, maybe, I don't know if they'll be listening to this podcast in particular. I think many of them will probably understand at least what you're talking about and have some general concepts of being in the flow and accepting and allowing and these kinds of concepts. But I know there's a lot of people who that would be very foreign to, because I was one of them. And so my mind goes there for some reason. That's where my mind went. Just thinking about how foreign of an idea this is to many people of just, I'm going to accept what's happening and believe and trust that it's supposed to happen and that it's, it's exactly as it is supposed to be, being truly in their feminine nature. And there's so many, certainly men who are over masculine, but then there's also a lot of women who are very masculine by nature because they have to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people lacking that feminine, divine feminine, of course, is what I'm referring to, just being in the flow and allowing and
Yeah.
receiving, not so much doing and creating and making whatever happen in your life. And so, yeah, can you guys share a little bit about how you found this feminine space? Like, were you always in the feminine? Were you, ever since you were 5 years old, you're like, you know what? I know they got me. They're looking out for me. I don't have to, do anything, necessarily. I'll do nothing, yet nothing is left undone. Like, okay, like it's all good. Or was there a point where you realized, oh, okay, I'm connected to this thing that's bigger than me, and trusting in it, having faith in it to provide whatever needs to be provided, whether it's the path or whether it's people on the path or whatever. How did you get to that place, or were you always in that place?
Good
Yeah. Yeah.
question. I'll go first. All right, I really want to, because I really love this. You brought up this feminine and masculine thing, and a quick segue on that with relationships. Alex, you talked about the path of service. One of my favorite and least favorite things that I've teachings from Ram Dass, is that the path of relationships. It is a path to enlightenment, awakening, but it's the hardest path. only go down this path if you have no other options.
Yeah.
Seriously, like warnings, red tape all over it for awakening. Not good or bad, but if you're looking for your path to waking up, to escaping this bonds of attachment and everything, relationships is the hardest one. So I think that's just a great place to ground this conversation, especially in the lens that Ian and I take often about relationship coaching and helping with relationships. And in just what you were talking about especially the females having to take on more and more masculine roles leads to some different issues in relationships, speaking in broad strokes, but some depolarization, some issues with energy happening naturally because there's a difference between what's in the workplace or what's in someone's career and the energy they want to have or would naturally have in their home or other environments. Really interesting. Another just flag to plant there about relationships. But yeah, this archetypal feminine and masculine thing, I did not feel safe or comfortable to inhabit anything more feminine or receptive for a long time. I was very hardened and separate from that around me and very masculine. Just I have to create the world. I have to do whatever it takes. I didn't feel looked out for by my family, and I took basically caretaking roles for my entire family from a young age. My mom wasn't very good at taking care of herself. So it started there, like, all right, well, I don't even have her looking out for me. So I got to take care of it all. I was doing her taxes at age 15 and, did all my own scholarship applications, found my way to college, was very lucky to be the first person to go to college, and then worked my ass off to stay there and to do stuff. So it was always this masculine making, hustling thing. And it wasn't until I found meditation really that I found this like a place where I was able to settle down for even a moment long enough to let that ego, that planning, hyper vigilant part of me just like rest. And it was everything to me. It was like, whoa, oh, there's another way of being. So I would honestly go that far. I'd say maybe before that, music was probably in nature or my only other areas where I used to call it accessing spirit. But here, Ian, I really like the way you framed this. And another way, it was being feminine, being receptive, being archetypally feminine, being receptive. And in music and nature, I could relax. I could surrender to whatever was around me. But in any other setting, not a chance. Until meditation. And then I would say, thankful that led me also to explore psychedelics, another form of deep surrender and opening experientially that opened me up further and then deepened my meditation practice, my spiritual practice, my yoga practice, and allowed me to rest in there until I really found flow. Dancing, ecstatic dancing, flowing with a staff often is my flow toy of choice, but flowing with something, like you'll see indigenous fire dancing and stuff like that. That has been the other area where I've really found a trance-like surrender. It's also masculine and feminine. That's what I've really liked about flow, is that it can flow in between the masculine and the fierce and the martial. And I can be doing martial movements, and then I can be doing beautiful flowing movements. And there's a dance between the two.
Derrick, for real quick, was there a specific meditation that you can recall where you were like, oh shit, that's the ego? Or, oh my God, I've been running in this certain direction, but now you mentioned holding space, meditation, allowing the space for your ego to rest. When is there like one time where you were like, oh shit, my ego's resting? Like I've figured this out. I'm noticing this now. Can you speak to that?
I absolutely can. Great question. The answer is actually pretty easy. I wonder if we have the number of episodes here. It was from he was kind of my OG meditation teacher, the first one. He really showed me a thing. Sam Harris. If you guys are aware of him, I love Sam Harris. He has a podcast. He has a meditation app, the Waking Up app. And back when it was all one, it used to be the Waking Up podcast before he split into the meditation app and then his podcast, when it was all just the Waking Up podcast. I can't even see how many episodes ago that was. episode 0, not even episode 1. He had an episode 0 that was just a recorded meditation, and there was an episode like Sub-Zero. There was a longer version of the same one. So there was a 9-minute and like 24-second long meditation, and a 24-minute and like 30-second long. I wouldn't be surprised if those are the exact numbers. We'll have to check sometime. But like I did them so many times. It was the only thing I had, and it really worked for me. And he teaches a very simple style of what starts as a little mindfulness, vipassana, become aware of your body, become aware of your breath. But then he incorporates the non-dual teachings, and he incorporates Dzogchen with simple pointing out instructions about the self. Look for the one that is looking. See what's there. Point attention at itself. A little nonsensical, koan-esque, pointing out instructions, they're called in the tradition, that really were frustrating. I didn't get much, but I already got something just from sitting with my breath. So I kept coming back. But eventually something clicked. It happened in like a bell ringing. They got a bell ringing. There was some awareness of non-self there. And it gave me a touchstone to keep coming back to. And I kept coming back to the cushion day after day, every single day for almost a decade now, and built that. Yeah, great question. I'm curious to hear Alex's ringing of the bell too, if there's enough follow up on that in.
Wow, beautiful. You guys are amazing. Yeah, I mean, just like that Ram Dass sit around the fire or recording on Spotify where he says, you're just not who you think you are. You're not that person. And he says, in this very life, you can know it. And so, from the core of doership, from the core of ego that says, I do, one example, when it might sometimes it's hard for people to hear maybe, but this podcast we're doing right now, right? This was going to happen today. Like this is written in the destiny of the universe. This podcast, just like everything else, was going to happen, right? Like when Jesus says, even the very hairs on your head are numbered. Or in the Quran, they say there's not a seed buried in the earth, but that God doesn't know about it. Or Ramakrishna, the great saint that was a devotee of Kali. He has a story. He was a priest at the Dakshineshwar temple in India. And he said some Sikhs came to the temple one day and they talked to me and they said, you see those leaves blowing on the Ashwata tree here? They said, not even one of those leaves blows except by the will of God. And so these things, so the doership would, so this was going to happen today, right? This podcast, whether or not I was worried and stressed about it all day or didn't think about it at all. Like the body is still going to go where it's going to go. And it's written to happen this way. But when we attach to the sense of control and ego, then it's creating a seemingly separate entity that has to force everything that is separate from the whole. But that entity actually at its root isn't there. It's like if you peeled the onion away to the core and there was no core, or you unwrapped the string but there's no ball in the middle of the string. It's just consciousness. Um, so what I learned about giving up, surrendering, and giving up control that a lot of us have a trouble to understand is it doesn't mean that you're not going to do things. That's what people think. Like, if I give up, if I surrender, that means I'm not going to have my job or I'm not going to take care of my family or I'm just going to sit on the couch all day. But really, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, all action takes place by the interweaving of the forces of nature. And he tells Arjuna, he's like, you have to act. He's like, it's acting is in the nature of the material world. So when we surrender, it doesn't mean that we don't do anything. Stuff is still gonna happen. It's not a giving up like, oh, I surrender. I'm gonna go sit on my couch and binge watch TV. It's you actually have more life energy. Like you have way more life energy and more flow because you're not as bound up in the thing, and then still I'll get caught in it, but it expands my life energy greatly, through that surrender. Um, and then to narrow it down a little more into what you're saying, yeah, I've always focused a lot on cultivating also the feminine energy inside myself and blending that masculine and feminine. And I can't point maybe to a particular practice exactly, but I definitely have found the value of the feminine energy through communication, which I've learned with psychedelics, which I've learned through my years in 12 step, through Kundalini Yoga, working with some of those energies, definitely. Through the little bit of experience I've had with ecstatic dance, or anytime I get a chance to dance, sometimes in Kundalini classes, sometimes at kirtan events, I do think it's, well, definitely as a man. I mean, yeah, for anyone, it's good to balance them. But I know, speaking as a male, I do think it's good to have that balance and to cultivate both of those energies. And I think I have good relationships and spiritual connections with a lot of females too, for that reason, because I can relate with that energy in that way. And I guess, yeah, I mean, it kind of makes me think, Derek, of the topic, one of the ideas you brought up just before about music and the power of music, because music, and specifically what I usually do is kirtan, which is devotional chanting, like Hindu chanting, and that opens my heart tremendously. I was actually just at a kirtan 2 nights ago in Chicago with the Radhikanas, but that singing and that dancing and that love and those divine mantras open up my heart tremendously. And that's mainly what I do when I drive and all of these things. And it's a huge practice for me. And it often brings me into just sobbing tears when I drive and feeling immense love. And that's like that longing too. But I did want to say a good point a friend of mine brought up was, well, we were talking about how sometimes in Kundalini and at kirtans, people have a hard time sometimes to get into the sound, to express themselves, to do the chant or to do the mantra. And I mentioned about maybe people are worried about they sound or something. And he said, yeah, but I think even deeper than that, he said it's the fear of the opening up. That if you really get into the chant or the mantra, you have to really open the heart, right? You have to really surrender yourself. And if we're, afraid to do that or not let go, then we will hold back. And I thought that was interesting, and it made me realize, yeah, and maybe that ties in a little bit with what you were thinking about the healing power of music. But yeah, we got to risk being a little vulnerable to open the heart.
That's right. Yeah. No, great connections all around. And a really good question, Ian. And back to that, how do you find flow was kind of the thing. And I really like that you took that, Alex, to that, those extremes that people worry about. If I surrender, am I going to do nothing? Am I just going to sit on the couch? People worry about meditation over that. Will I lose my edge? Will I stop? And I think that's a pretty false fear, not very founded fear, but I see why that happens. People think in extremes. And I think you're exactly right. I think the action comes from it. Ian and I were talking earlier about like a bear in the forest. And whenever it does find something it needs to chase after, it will chase. It's just not chasing for no reason. It's not making a bunch of noise and clambering around and destroying brush for no reason. But when it's called to act, it acts. It's the same thing with us, where if we tune in, I think we actually find a lot more call for action, for service, if there's music around, for dance. And I truly think one of the big maladies of our time, the dis-eases of our time, is just the sedentary lifestyle, stagnation, and that these movements build inside of us from every song we hear, every hug we should have given or something. And they're just like there. And unless we work them out and express them through ecstatic dance, yoga, exercise, running, hugging, whatever you name it, lots of ways to get your activity. I think there is consequence to that. And that's was my first place I went in with your question about flow, was really to like the physical one. I keep noticing different imbalances in my body, my spine, and if I just try to ignore them and push through and do the thing, but if I take whatever time it takes, 5-10 minutes to work with my body to like unkink, all this flow, this abundance starts coming through. And I think a lot of the times, not to speak for other people, but I think some other people are too, are walking around in that contracted state, not even recognizing the flow that's there because we habituate to it. Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking? Is that addressed in any of the through lines that you're seeing with that tuning into the flow?
Yeah, I think you're all over those lines, man. I think you're right exactly. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm new to flow in regard to like flow art. Um, but having found that was, I've never been much of a dancer. Definitely way too, I've always been in my head. Like as a kid, like I just remember like not wanting to look dumb or be perceived as like, I don't know, doing it wrong. Like I've never felt like I could dance the way that I'm supposed to dance. Like it just never felt good in my body to dance. It always felt kind of like weird and awkward and a little bit forced. So like dancing has never really been something that I've enjoyed doing, unless it's sarcastically. I can dance sarcastically and I feel great about it because I'm being funny and I'm really good at being funny. Um, and so finding flow art was huge for me because that's the closest thing I've ever done to like getting into my body and just allowing it to move without really thinking about what it looks like while it's moving. It
yeah.
is moving. And I also have experience with the contact staff, and it's such a incredible like gateway to exploring your body in a way that I would have never guessed I would have been able to have found. It's just so weird. Like it's a stick with like something heavy on each side, and there's something about it that just I connect with it in ways I've never connected with anything quite like that. So highly recommend anyone who resonates with not feeling like dancing feels good in your body, or finding a flow state where you're just moving without caring at all what it looks like. I highly recommend flow arts, not just contact staff. I mean, poi is a really fun one for some people. It hurts my brain, so poi isn't something that I do often. And when I do, I end up hitting myself in the face, and then I stop for a week or two, and then I get back into it. But
That's part of the journey. Part of the
it
journey.
really is. Contact staff was no different. I've definitely taken plenty of bumps and bruises from that thing too, but it feels better in my body to work with that. But yeah, so anybody who is resonates with feeling that way, I highly recommend looking into flow art. And yeah, Derrick and I are resources. If you're, depending on how deep you want to go into it, I have some directions I can put you. I go to a week long like intensive workshop in Mexico once a year to go and train with some of the best fire performers that are walking this great earth. So
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
so yeah,
Well, I guess you guys are the ones to reach out to for that. That's incredible.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. So if anyone's
Oh,
looking for those type of opportunities, please reach out.
Yeah, truly
thank
incredible
you so
stuff
much.
there. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
echo all that. That's definitely how I found my way. Same thing with not dancing. Like, and don't get me wrong, I would go to concerts, but I was a jump. I would just like jump, and I'd have the energy, but did not feel comfortable dancing. I was actually just at a concert last Friday to end the week in Denver with a conference, and beautiful. And someone that I was with, it was so wonderful. It was just looked to me and was like, I don't feel self conscious for like the first time in like a situation like this. Like the vibe was
Mm,
so good, the music, the people. There was something about it. I said, entering into that space in that way where she didn't feel self conscious. My heart exploded. I was like, that's it. You there?
that's it.
That's wonderful. Oh, it made me so happy the whole night. And yeah, that's definitely been a path for me. That whatever it takes to get unself conscious, to get out of all that. And the other thing I wanted to say about that, the flow arts, is the instant feedback that happens when you're distracted. When you're meditating, unless you have someone in your mind with a ruler, your mind will wander, and it'll wander for a while, and you won't know, and eventually you'll notice it was a thought that caught you. Maybe you can note thought and return back to your breath. It's your normal mindfulness practice. But if you're doing mindful movement with like a flow staff, you learn as soon as the poi hits you in the face or the staff knocks your headphones off. And I've been there so many times, or you drop it and it lands on the ground. You learn
Uh,
pretty quickly when you're distracted. I can I use it to note thoughts. It's like a extended form of meditation. It's that quick because I have so many. I've been doing this for years now. I have so many years of muscle memory and stuff that if I drop it, it's because I was distracted 99% of the time, and I can actually note the thought. It happens right as the thought's there. It's kind of a beautiful feedback. So I just get to deepen into my breath, let go some more, get out of the ego again, stop doing it, and let it be done, and then I'm back in the flow. So that's what I've loved. I've never seen anything so beautiful. I mean, just talking about it now, I'm going to go flow as soon as we're done here,
Yep,
guys. I'm
same.
I'm going to be hopping out the door. It's such a
You guys
beautiful,
are
uh,
amazing.
it's just such a beautiful tool for getting into the flow. Again, I'm just lucky to have found it. I don't think there's any, exceptional ability other than just doing a thing and finding what your thing is.
Just keep
But if you
picking it
keep
up.
doing it,
Just
yeah,
keep picking it up every day. Just don't
yeah,
stop picking it up.
exactly. You can find your path there, your path to flow.
Mm-hmm.
One of the many paths. All paths lead to the ocean, right? Or all rivers lead to the ocean.
Right.
They do. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
talking about, it reminded me what you were saying originally about were you always, were we always like that, feeling the flow or feeling that we had to control at some point? And what you said about the dancing reminded me too, because people that I know or meet now might think always that I was on a spiritual path or connected with God. I mean, I talk about the addiction, but I was extremely, I mean, I was the epitome of self-consciousness personified, like self-conscious, low self-esteem, fear. That definitely would never dance. I mean, when I was in elementary and school and stuff, I wouldn't even hang out with the other kids because I was too afraid to ask them to hang out. And I remember in uh, preschool, only the one teacher when she had time would spend time with me, but I was too afraid to ask the other kids. I wanted to play the drums at music time, but I was too afraid to do it. In first grade, this kid used to have to skip kickball to hang out with me every other day at the playground because I wanted to play kickball with all the other kids, but I was too afraid to go play with them. One time we played that game, you know, the game where you all hold hands and they say like Red Rover, and they call you over. They were calling me, but I wouldn't even run because I was so afraid. And they kept saying my name, and I was just like, knew they were saying it, but I was too scared. And so they picked someone else. And that was like probably fourth grade or fifth grade. So, I mean, yeah, no wonder then I had the addictions because that gave me what I thought was relief from that extreme fear and anxiety and self-consciousness, and then the anger and violence and stuff that came was also just that, I guess, in a different version. I mean, the anger is really probably fear. And so I just say that all to say that yeah, we can change and have deep transformations, and doing this inner work on ourselves really does, it does work and it does transform. And I am so much different than I was at that time. I'll definitely sometimes have moments of self-consciousness. It's a lot less though. It's probably, if it was 100% before, it might only be 2% now. I mean, it's a drastic change from what it was then. And it is by grace, but from the seeming level of separateness, we have to think we're doing the work, right? Like in the end, it is all that one consciousness, but that means that in any given moment, we have to do the work on ourselves. Like we have to keep going. But results do come, man. Changes do happen. And sometimes it doesn't seem like it because sometimes it's a long road or a hard road, or we feel like we're not making progress. But if we persevere, like that saying they have in Buddhism, like if you just fill the pot of water with one drop of goodness at a time, that it that it does fill up. But yeah, I definitely came from a place of, I mean, I had no concept at all during drug dealing and addiction and stuff of any kind of surrender or any kind of asking for help or any kind of flow at all. It wasn't until I entered into recovery and then I started reading the books about all these great saints and stuff, and I started realizing, wow, I'm like, it all seems like they're kind of talking about the same thing. And you start realizing these people that are known as the epitomes of like the highest states of consciousness a human can reach, you're like, they're all kind of saying the same thing, right? And you start to realize, wow, Ramdas, you say that too. You realize, well, they must all have been talking about something. And then you start practicing and embodying it, and then you start to feel it and learn it and see it for yourself. And then you say, oh, this is And it really does, like in the AA literature, they say we've been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence. And when they read that, people usually joke in the meetings. Like some people really feel it, but mostly people kind of take it as a joke. But they really meant that when they wrote it. You know, they really meant, they said many of us have had deep and profound spiritual experiences that have rocketed us into the fourth dimension or a new dimension of existence. And it's true. You know, we might not be able to live in it all the time because we do have these habits and patterns and attachments, and that's where the work's involved. But we truly can live in a deep space of love while we're here on this earth.
How many of us are in the fifth dimension?
What's in
Any sixes?
Any sixes in there? Don't even ask about the seventh. You don't want to know.
We don't ask about the seven.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that here.
That's funny. Yeah, did you want to touch a little bit on the music, about the power of music and sound?
Let's see where we're at. Not too much. Not like where we're at with everything. Only anything that's a direct representation, which I think I can riff on that a little bit. We keep talking about separation, isolation. One of my favorite panels was one with two like musical performers and producers and a NASA scientist, and who also somehow worked with music. And I kept talking about frequencies, how everything's a frequency, and the frequency of love, the frequency of music, and these different musics, and how these artists are intentionally putting certain frequencies into their songs or into popular music for, you know, the heart chakra, for other things, healing tones without demonizing negative tones or other tones that don't activate that it takes it all to make this play of life in the play of a song. But talking about intention and frequencies, and that's just one of the many metaphors I pick up for discussions like this. Whenever we talk about separation, it's like we're on our own little like frequency shooting out, and no antennas are receiving us and no radios are transmitting us. But like at the end of the day, we're all, you know, sound waves going through and merging into this song of the universe. Yeah. And it's just about believing in, finding, surrendering to your home, your flow, your stream that you're actually in. You've been there the whole time, but we put up these barriers. And, you know, they say addiction is a disease of isolation. I kept thinking about that. And Alex, how you said, you know, you just didn't feel at home in the world. I've felt that way a lot. And I love that you're able to share those explicit examples, like the Red Rover. You know, this just this separation, this not being able to surrender into others. And I really resonate with that. And the resonance of it all, the idea is that, you know, one way to look at it is we're all frequencies and we're trying to tune maybe that. We can tune our frequency a bit, and we can resonate. We can find resonance and harmony with these other frequencies out there. And there's really been no separation all along, just like the radio waves. It's going through everything, coming through and passing through.
Yeah, my good friend who does Nada Yoga, the yoga of sound and kirtan and everything, his brand is called All Waves and Forever. And when he explained it to me, I was like, oh yeah, it's all waves and forever.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have anything you want to leave us with, Ian, before we finish up?
Oh boy, anything I want to leave you with. If I had to decide on closing words, I guess just don't avoid anything.
Yeah.
Avoidance in my experience causes so much suffering. Avoiding is it's the cousin to like not accepting things as they are. Yeah. And that also creates a lot of suffering. So if you could do those two things, avoid nothing, accept everything, I think you would suffer a lot less. And that's what I'm here to do, is help bring awareness to those who are creating their own suffering. So don't avoid and accept things as they are.
That's beautiful.
Can I tag on to that?
Do it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. It's what we were saying earlier about the flow, you know, paying attention first to our own body And if there's something that we want to avoid, try going toward it, try approaching it instead. What's that tension and what's it telling us? And tools like dance and flow and mantra can actually really help with that. So I just want to get that out there because it's been a long, clawing journey for me to do anything like that for myself, and still learning, still, not doing as much as I would if I was fully in the flow, but dipping my toe in day after day. I just wanted to echo that and then leave us with this quote. I got to talk to Raghu Marcus from the Love Serve Remember Foundation, host of the Mind Rolling podcast. He actually used to do all the intros for the Be Here Now episodes that you were talking about. And, eventually it switched over to another great member. But it's so wild to get to talk to him a few times at the conference. And whenever I told him about the work that Ian and I do and, invited him on the podcast, when I talked about intimacy and communication training, he, something that twinkled in his eye, and he recommended this series they're doing with Ram Dass. And the tagline for the series is, "Enlightenment is intimacy with all things." Enlightenment is intimacy with all things.
It is.
Yeah,
That
so just want to
reminds
leave
me
it at
of
that.
that reminds me of Ram Dass was talking about Maharaji once, and he said he's in Sahaj Samadhi. He said, "You know what that means?" He said it means he's in blissful, ecstatic communion with the entire universe all the time. And he said, "I'll take that." He said, "That's pretty good." Um,
I'll take it. Sure.
that's funny.
I'll
But
settle.
yeah,
I'll settle for that.
yeah. Yeah, he's like, that'd be enough. Yeah, that's beautiful though, that intimacy. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, if you guys want to find Ian and Derrick on the Do You Feel Heard podcast, you can probably find their website through there. And on the links in the bio of this podcast, I will put the previous one we all did together and the previous ones me and Derrick have done together as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
and if
thanks
anyone
for
wants
having us,
to,
Alex.
yeah, if
Thank
anyone wants
you
to reach
so
out
much.
if anyone wants to reach out for coaching, we do have our coaching services. We got me and Ian, and then we have two other wonderful coaches. So anything at all related to intimacy, communication, as we talked about here, like intimacy goes deep. That can be with yourself. That can be a spiritual endeavor. That can be, in a lot of different areas. So it's work we love to do, and I think work that Ian is really called to do. And I'm so glad that he was able to train me up in this. And it's just an honor to work with him and to work with this organization and to get to talk with you guys. So connect with us, hit us up. We want to help. We want to be there for you.
Thank you guys. I'm Ram.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
I'm Ram.